had watched civilizations die. He had seen proud empires burn themselves to nothing. He had written the final words of species that no longer existed. For 300 years, he had served as a chronicler for the collective, recording the rise and fall of worlds across the galaxy. He thought he had seen everything. He was wrong. The assignment came on a quiet morning. The collective wanted him to observe a new war. A young species called humans had angered the hegemony, and now they were sending their fleet to end them. It was supposed to be simple. They had 400 warships. The humans had 89. Every calculation said the same thing. The humans would be dead within 6 cycles. Packed his recording devices and boarded the Eternal Witness, a neutral observation vessel. 12 other species had sent representatives to watch. They gathered in the viewing chamber, drinking warm liquids and making predictions. Most of them were already bored. They had seen this kind of war before. A stronger species would crush a weaker one. There was nothing interesting about it. Then the human liaison arrived. Her name was Park. She was small by human standards, with dark hair cut short and eyes that looked tired. She walked into the room full of ancient beings and powerful ambassadors, and she did not bow. She did not apologize for her species or beg for help. She simply nodded and took her seat. Studied her, he had met many species facing extinction. They usually showed fear, anger, or desperate hope. Park showed none of these things. She looked like someone waiting for a train. He approached her during the first meal break. The other observers avoided the human as if her death was a disease they might catch. Had no such concerns. He was a chronicler. His job was to understand. "Lieutenant Park," he said, settling his long body into the seat across from her. "I have a question." She looked up from her food. "Ask." "Your fleet is outnumbered more than 4 to 1. Your technology is not superior. Your species has never fought an interstellar war before." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "How do you intend to survive?" Park set down her eating tool. She looked at him for a long moment, and something shifted in her tired eyes. It was not fear. It was not hope. It was something older and stranger, something had never seen before. "We don't intend to survive," she said. "We intend to win." Recorded her words in his chronicle. He labeled them as typical pre-extinction denial. He had heard such statements before from dying species. They always believed they were special. They always believed they would be the exception. They never were. The fleet gathered at the edge of the system, watched through the observation screens as the human ships took their positions. They were ugly vessels, built for function rather than beauty. Their hulls were thick and gray, covered in weapons that looked crude compared to elegance. The flagship was called the Soul's Promise, commanded by a human named. Pulled up the Admiral's file, was 52 years old. He had served in 3 wars on Earth before humans reached the stars. He had a wife, 2 children, and a granddaughter. His daughter served on a ship called the Star. His record showed nothing special. He was not a genius or a hero. He was just a man who had been given an impossible task. The fleet arrived on schedule. 400 ships arranged in perfect formation, their golden hulls glowing against the darkness of space. They moved like a single organism, each vessel knowing its exact place. They were beautiful in the way that death is sometimes beautiful. The observation chamber fell silent. Even the most cynical ambassadors felt the weight of the moment. This was the end of humanity. Everyone knew it. A communication came through from the commander. His name was unpronounceable to human tongues, but his message was clear. Surrender now, and some humans would be allowed to live as servants. Fight, and every human world would burn. Expected the humans to negotiate. Every species negotiated when faced with certain death. Even a bad deal was better than extinction. Admiral's response was 3 words: "Come and try." The commander waited for more. There was no more. The channel closed. For a long moment, nothing happened. The 2 fleets hung in space, 400 golden ships facing 89 gray ones. The mathematics were simple. The outcome was certain. Then the human fleet began to move. They did not retreat. They did not form defensive lines. They did not do any of the things that dying species were supposed to do. Instead, all 89 ships accelerated forward, directly toward the armada. The observers in the chamber began to mutter. This was not strategy. This was madness. The humans were throwing themselves at a wall of weapons. Park stood at the observation window, her hands clasped behind her back. Her reflection showed no expression at all. Moved to stand beside her. "This is suicide," he said. She did not turn. "Maybe. Your people will die. Some of them. All of them." Now she turned. Those tired eyes found his, and again he saw that strange something moving behind them. "My little brother is on the dawn," she said quietly. "He's 23. He likes old movies and bad jokes. He sends me pictures of his cat every week." She paused. "If he dies today, I want them to remember it. I want them to remember it forever." Did not understand. He added her words to his chronicle anyway. The first weapons fired. The war had begun. The first human ship died in silence. Watched the tactical display as the vessel named Morning Light took 3 direct hits from plasma cannons. Its shields failed in seconds. The hull cracked open like an egg, spilling fire and metal into the void. 96 crew members. Gone. He waited for the human fleet to stop. Every species stopped after the first death. The reality of war always hit harder than the idea of it. Young soldiers saw their friends die and suddenly remembered that they wanted to live. Commanders saw their numbers fall and started calculating retreat paths. The humans did not stop. The remaining 88 ships pushed forward even faster. They spread out across the battlefield in a pattern that looked like chaos but moved like water. When they fired at one ship, it was already gone, sliding sideways while another vessel took its place. When a gap opened in the formation, 3 human ships dove through it before the enemy could react. Had studied military tactics for 200 years. He had never seen anything like this. "They are not following standard formation protocols," observed an ambassador, her silver scales flashing with confusion. "Each ship appears to be making independent decisions." Park nodded. "That's correct. But how do they coordinate? How do they know where to move?" "They trust each other." His voice was calm. "Every captain knows what the others will do because they train together, ate together, lived together. They don't need orders, they need each other." The look disturbed. Her species communicated through chemical signals and hive structures. The idea of individual minds working together without direct control was strange and frightening to her. The battle continued. Human ships fell one by one. The bright star, the horizon, the new spring. Each death was a flash of light on the tactical display, a brief explosion before the darkness returned. Counted them carefully. It was his job to count. But something strange was happening. They were dying too. Not many at first. The ships were larger, stronger, better armed. But the humans were not fighting like prey. They were fighting like wolves, circling and biting and refusing to stay still. A human destroyer would take damage, and instead of retreating, it would charge the nearest enemy vessel, firing everything until one of them died. Sometimes both died. The humans did not seem to care. Admiral's voice crackled over the open channel. He was giving orders, but they were not the orders expected. No desperate commands, no screaming for retreat, no prayers to whatever gods humans believed in. Just coordinates, timing, simple words spoken in a simple tone. Dawn, shift to Sector 7. Star, cover the left flank. Soul's promise, advancing to primary target. The man sounded like he was organizing a delivery schedule, not fighting for his species' survival. 1 hour passed. The humans had lost 31 ships. They had lost 12. By normal calculations, this was a disaster for humanity. They had lost more than a third of their fleet while barely scratching the enemy. Any rational species would surrender now, save what remained and hope for mercy. The humans kept fighting. 2 hours passed, human losses 44, losses 31. The mathematics were getting worse for humanity. Their fleet was shrinking fast. Soon there would be nothing left. But notice something on the tactical display. The formation had changed. The golden ships were no longer advancing. They had spread out, creating distance between themselves, moving more carefully. Their attacks came slower now, more calculated. "They're scared," said a voice beside him. Turned, Parkett appeared without sound, her eyes fixed on the display. "That is not possible," he said. "They are winning. They have superior numbers and firepower. Fear would be illogical." "Fear is never logical," pointed at the flagship, a massive vessel that hung at the back of their formation. "Look at their command ship. When the battle started, it was at the center of their fleet. Now it's hiding behind 3 layers of escorts. Their admiral is afraid." "Afraid of what? Your fleet is dying." Smiled, it was not a happy smile. "That's exactly what scares him. We're dying and we're not stopping. Every species that have fought before, they broke. They surrendered when the losses got too high. They ran when hope disappeared." She paused. "We're not running. He doesn't know what to do with an enemy that refuses to break." Considered this. It seemed foolish. Bravery without hope was just delayed death. That would eventually kill every human ship regardless of how much courage they showed. But as he watched the battle continue, he began to understand something. They were not just fighting ships. They were fighting an idea, and the idea was spreading. A human frigate named the Spirit took heavy damage to its engines. It was dead in space, unable to move, unable to retreat. The logical response was evacuation. Get the crew out before the reactor exploded. Instead, the captain, a young woman named Song, ordered all power to weapons. The crippled ship turned toward the nearest cruiser and fired everything it had. Missiles, cannons, even emergency flares. The cruiser's shields held, but only barely. Then the Spirit exploded. The blast caught the cruiser's weakened shields. It caught 2 escort ships that had moved too close. When the fire cleared, 3 vessels were gone. The observation chamber was silent. "She killed herself," the whispered. "She destroyed her own ship on purpose." Park's voice was steady. "She spent herself. There's a difference." Added this to his chronicle. He was beginning to think that his original predictions might need revision. The battle was only beginning. The second day of battle broke every rule that knew about war. Wars were supposed to be quick. Species fought until one side realized they could not win, and then they stopped. Pride was expensive, and no civilization could afford to waste ships and soldiers on hopeless causes. This was the mathematics of survival. Every spacefaring species understood it. The humans did not understand it. Had not slept. He had watched the tactical display for 32 hours straight, recording every death, every explosion, every impossible moment. His body ached and his mind was tired, but he could not look away. He was witnessing something that had never happened before. The human fleet had 58 ships remaining. They had lost 31 in the first day alone. Their formation was broken, their ammunition was running low, and their crews were exhausted. By every measure, they were finished. They had lost 97 ships. Had checked the numbers 3 times. He had asked the ship's computer to verify. The result was always the same. The humans were losing the battle. They had fewer ships, less firepower, and no hope of reinforcement. But somehow they were making the pay for every inch of space. "How is this possible?" asked the observer, his crystalline body flickering with confusion. "Their technology is inferior. Their tactics are crude. They should have been destroyed hours ago." Had been asking himself the same question. He had watched the footage over and over, trying to find the secret. Human ships were not faster or stronger than ships. Their weapons were not more powerful. Their shields were actually weaker. But they did not stop. That was the only difference he could find. When a human ship took damage, it kept fighting. When a human crew saw their friends die, they got angry instead of afraid. When a human captain knew that death was coming, they spent their final moments trying to take enemies with them. They did not know how to fight this. Their military doctrine was based on efficiency. Strike hard, minimize losses, force surrender. They had conquered dozens of species using this method, but efficiency only worked when the enemy wanted to live. The humans seemed to want something else entirely. A transmission came through from the Dawn. Recognized the name immediately. This was the ship that carried Park's younger brother. The captain was a woman named. She was 34 years old with a scar across her left cheek and a voice like grinding metal. Her ship had taken critical damage. The engines were dead, life support was failing, and half her crew was already gone. Any other captain would evacuate, get the survivors off the ship and onto rescue vessels, accept defeat and live to fight another day. Captain ordered her remaining crew to the escape pods, all except herself and 7 volunteers who refused to leave. "What are you doing?" demanded the commander over the open channel. He sounded confused, almost offended. "Your ship is finished. You have no weapons. You cannot hurt us." His response was calm. "Watch me." She redirected all remaining power to the maneuvering thrusters. The crippled Dawn began to move, slowly at first, then faster. It was heading directly toward the carrier Magnificent Victory. The opened fire. Plasma bolts tore through the Dawn's hull. Atmosphere vented into space. Fires broke out in every section. The ship was dying and everyone aboard knew it. But it kept moving. Captain broadcast one final message. Not to her commanders, to her crew scattered across the fleet in escape pods and surviving ships. "See you on the other side, 7th Fleet. Make it count." The Dawn hit the Magnificent Victory at full speed. The explosion was enormous. The carrier's shields, already weakened from hours of combat, collapsed instantly. The fusion reactors on both ships detonated together, creating a ball of fire that lit up the tactical display like a small sun. When the light faded, the Magnificent Victory was gone. 2 escort ships that had been too close were gone as well. 3 ships destroyed by a vessel that was already dead. The observation chamber was completely silent. Could hear his own breathing, slow and steady, as his mind tried to process what he had just seen. The ambassador was trembling. Her silver scales had turned pale, almost white. "They're not fighting to survive," she whispered. "They're fighting to cost." Turned to look at Park. She was standing at the observation window, her face reflected in the glass. Tears were running down her cheeks, but she made no sound. Her hands were pressed against the window, fingers spread wide, as if she was trying to reach through the void. Her brother had been on that ship. Lieutenant Park said quietly. He did not know what else to say. Words seemed small and useless in this moment. She did not turn around. He always said he wanted to matter. He said he was tired of being nobody special. Her voice cracked just slightly. "I think he mattered." Added this to his chronicle. He was beginning to understand something about humans. They did not fight like other species because they did not think like other species. For them, war was not about mathematics or efficiency or even survival. It was about meaning. It was about refusing to be forgotten. They had 400 ships and all the advantages, but they could not kill meaning. And as long as that meaning lived, the humans would keep fighting. Day 3 began with a message that changed everything. The hegemony requested a ceasefire. Read the transmission 3 times. He could not believe it. The still had 194 ships. The humans had 11. By every calculation in the galaxy, they were winning. They could destroy the remaining human fleet in hours and then burn every human world to ash. But they wanted to stop. The observation chamber erupted in confused discussion. Ambassadors shouted over each other, trying to understand what was happening. Some thought it was a trap. Others thought they were showing mercy. A few suspected the transmission was fake. Watched Park. She had not slept in 3 days. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying over her brother. Her uniform was wrinkled and stained. But when she heard the ceasefire request, she smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had paid a terrible price and was finally seeing the receipt. "They're scared," she said. Her voice was hoarse. "They finally understand." They offered generous terms. The humans could keep their remaining ships. They could keep their colonies. All they had to do was stop fighting. The hegemony would withdraw and pretend this war never happened. It was the best deal any species had ever received from them. It was far better than they deserved by military standards. The humans had lost 80% of their fleet. They should be begging for mercy, not receiving it. Admiral's response came within minutes. He refused. The observation chamber fell silent. Even the most experienced diplomats could not find words. This made no sense. The humans were outnumbered nearly 18-1. A ceasefire would save the survivors. It would be considered a moral victory across the galaxy. Humanity would be remembered as the species that stood against thee and lived. But Admiral did not want to be remembered for living. He wanted something else entirely. Requested a private communication with Park. She agreed, and they met in a small room away from the other observers. She sat across from him, looking like a ghost wearing human skin. "Help me understand," said. "Your fleet is dying. Your admiral has been offered peace. Why does he refuse?" Was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was distant. Admiral's daughter was on the star. It was destroyed 14 hours ago. She was 27. She had just gotten married last year. She was planning to have children. Felt something shift in his understanding. He is acting from emotion, from grief. Yes, that is how species go extinct. Looked at him with those tired red eyes. That is how species win. She leaned forward. You calculate wars with numbers. Ships, weapons, ammunition, casualties. You add and subtract and find the most efficient path to victory. Every species in the galaxy does this. It's logical, it's rational, it's how civilized beings are supposed to think. She paused. Humans calculate differently. How? We calculate what we're willing to lose. Her hands were shaking slightly. My brother is dead. Admiral's daughter is dead. Thousands of our people are dead. And every single one of them died knowing that their death would mean something. Not because it would win the war. Maybe it won't. But because they refused to let them think they could hurt us without paying for it. Tried to process this. It went against everything he knew about survival. But if you lose, all those deaths mean nothing. No, shook her head. If we lose, those deaths mean even more. Because the next species that tries to bully will remember us. They'll remember that 89 ships stood against 400. They'll remember that we made it cost. And maybe they'll stand too. She stood up, suddenly looking older than her years. Humans don't fight to survive, chronicler. We fight to matter. And right now, we matter more than we ever have before. She left the room, sat alone with his thoughts. An hour later, the 11 remaining human ships launched a coordinated assault on the command vessel. Watched from the observation chamber. The human ships moved together, covering each other, drawing fire away from their wounded, pushing forward through waves of plasma and missiles. They were not fighting like a fleet anymore. They were fighting like a single animal, wounded and furious and absolutely determined to take its killer with it. 9 ships were destroyed in the assault. The Soul's promise was hit multiple times but kept moving. Admiral's voice never changed, never wavered, even as his ship burned around him. He gave orders until the last second. Then the last 2 human ships reached the command vessel. They fired everything they had left. Missiles, cannons, emergency weapons that were never meant for combat. The flagship's shields flickered, failed, and then the hull cracked open. The explosion was visible from every ship in the system. When the light faded, the command vessel was gone. Their admiral was dead. Their command structure was broken. 2 human ships remained, the Soul's Promise and the Light, 2 ships against 187. They did not continue the attack. They had the numbers. They had the firepower. They could easily destroy the last 2 human vessels and claim total victory. But they had seen what those 2 ships could do. They had watched 11 humans charge 200 and take their leader's head. They had learned that killing a human only made the next human angrier. They did not want to find out what those last 2 ships were willing to do. The hegemony surrendered unconditionally. The war ended with 2 ships and a question that would haunt the galaxy for centuries. How did they win? Spent weeks trying to answer this question. He reviewed every recording from the battle. He interviewed survivors from both sides. He consulted military experts from 12 different species. He wrote report after report, filling thousands of pages with analysis and theory. But the answer, when it finally came, was so simple that it terrified him. They did not surrender because they lost the battle. By every military calculation, they won. They destroyed 87 human ships while losing only 213 of their own. They had overwhelming firepower and numbers. They could have finished the job at any time. They surrendered because they realized what victory would cost. Human ships fought until they were nothing but burning metal. Human crews sang songs as they died, old songs from Earth about home and love and never giving up. Human officers recorded final messages for their families, not begging for rescue, but promising that others would come. More humans, angrier humans, humans who would remember. They had never faced an enemy like this. They conquered species that wanted to live. They broke civilizations that feared death. But humans did not fear death the way other species did. They feared something else entirely. They feared being forgotten. Commander was one of the 2 survivors. His ship, the Light, had taken more damage than any vessel should survive. Half his crew was dead. The other half was wounded. He had a piece of metal stuck in his leg that the doctors could not remove without killing him. When met him was sitting in a medical bay on a neutral station. He was 29 years old, but he looked 50. His hair had turned white during the battle. His hands shook when he lifted a cup to drink. "You want to know our secret?" said. It was not a question. Everyone wanted to know the secret. Everyone thinks it's something special, some hidden technology, some ancient warrior tradition, some genetic advantage that makes humans brave. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. It's none of that. You want to know what makes humans different. We're too stupid to know when we've lost. Waited for more. Every other species in the galaxy, they do the math. They count their ships and their enemies' ships, and when the numbers get bad enough, they stop. They surrender or retreat or die quickly to avoid suffering. It's logical. It's smart. Set down his cup. Humans don't do math during a war. We do something else. What? We get angry. His eyes were distant, lost in memories of fire and death. We see our friends die and we don't calculate the odds. We just want to hurt the ones who did it. We want to make them pay. And we keep wanting that until there's nothing left of us. By the time we finally think about the numbers, we've already made losing so expensive that winning isn't worth it anymore. Considered this. It explained the battle, but it raised new questions. This seems like a flaw, a weakness. How has your species survived long enough to reach the stars? Smiled, and for a moment he looked almost young again. We survived because we keep fighting each other. We've been at war with ourselves for our entire history, every generation, every continent. We've practiced losing badly for thousands of years. And somewhere along the way, we learned something that other species never had to learn. What? That survival isn't about being the strongest. It's about being the last one willing to stand. He gestured toward the window where stars burned in the endless dark. Out there, everyone assumes the strong survive. The species with the best ships, the most resources, the leaders. But that's not true. The ones who survive are the ones who refuse to stay down. The ones who keep getting up no matter how many times they're knocked down. That's us. That's all we are. Just really, really stubborn. Returned to the collective with his completed chronicle. The document was shared across the galaxy. Every species read it. Every military academy studied it. Every politician discussed its implications. A new doctrine emerged among spacefaring civilizations. It had no official name, but everyone knew what it meant. Never go to war with humanity. Not because you will lose. You might win. You probably will win, at least by the numbers. But even if you win, you will never stop paying for it. Humans will remember. Humans will come back. Humans will teach their children to hate you, and their children's children, and every generation after that. Killing a human doesn't end the fight. It just makes the fight personal. 50 years later was dying. His body was old and tired. His mind was still sharp, but his time was ending. He had spent the last decades traveling the galaxy, recording more histories, watching more civilizations rise and fall. But he always returned to that one battle, that one impossible victory. His final visitor was an old woman with gray hair and tired eyes. She wore an admiral's uniform now, with more medals than seemed possible. Her name was Park. "I read your chronicle," she said, settling into a chair beside his bed. "You made us sound terrifying." "You are terrifying," replied. His voice was weak, but his meaning was clear. Laughed. It was the same laugh he remembered from 50 years ago, tired but warm. "We're just stubborn. We've lost so much so many times. Ice ages, plagues, wars against ourselves. We learned that survival isn't about being the best. It's about refusing to quit." She took his hand gently. Her skin was warm, full of life. His was cold, fatting away. "Thank you," she said, "for telling our story, for making the galaxy understand." Made one final note in his chronicle. His hand was shaking, but the words were clear. "I have seen empires rise and fall. I have watched species burn themselves to extinction in the name of pride, but I have never seen anything like humanity. They do not fight to conquer. They do not fight to destroy. They fight because something in them refuses to accept defeat as permanent, something old and fierce and fundamentally unbreakable. The universe does not fear humans because they are powerful. The universe fears them because they do not know how to stop. And perhaps that is the most human thing of all. In a galaxy full of species that learn to survive by knowing when to quit, they are the ones who never learned that lesson. They are the ones who keep standing. They are the ones who will still be standing when the stars themselves go dark. He closed his eyes. The chronicle was complete.